7:55 in the morning, December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor sleeps under a soft Hawaiian sun. Sailors eat breakfast. Church bells are about to ring. Then the sky fills with engines. 183 Japanese aircraft scream in from the north. Torpedo bombers skimming the water. Dive bombers plunging toward Battleship Row. A single signal crackles across radio waves. Tora, Tora, Tora. Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. Surprise achieved. Within minutes, the USS Arizona takes a direct hit to her forward magazine. She erupts. 1,177 sailors and Marines die in under 9 minutes. America is still at peace. In exactly 2 hours, it will not be. To understand that morning, rewind a decade. Since 1931, Imperial Japan had been expanding across Asia, seizing Manchuria, then plunging into full-scale war with China in 1937. Japan's war machine ran on one thing it did not have: oil. 90% of it came from abroad. When Japanese forces pushed into French Indochina in 1941, the United States answered with an oil embargo, freezing Japanese assets and cutting off nearly all fuel supplies. For Tokyo's military leadership, the message was stark: negotiate a retreat, or seize the resources of Southeast Asia by force. But any strike south, toward the oil fields of the Dutch East Indies, would expose Japan's flank to the one power capable of crushing it, the American Pacific Fleet, anchored at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Diplomats in Washington and Tokyo kept talking through the autumn of 1941. Behind closed doors, Japan's Imperial General Headquarters had already decided, if there was to be a war, America's fleet would be struck first, without warning. The plan belonged to Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of Japan's combined fleet. Having studied in the United States, he understood American industrial power better than almost anyone in Tokyo, and feared a prolonged war Japan could not win. His solution was audacious: a single, crippling strike to destroy the Pacific Fleet before it could threaten Japan's advance south. Through the autumn of 1941, Japanese pilots trained in Kagoshima Bay, its shallow waters deliberately chosen to mirror Pearl Harbor's harbor depth, practicing torpedo runs modified with wooden fins to function in shallow water. On November 26, a strike force of 6 aircraft carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, slipped out of remote Hidokappa Bay under strict radio silence, commanded by Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo. For 11 days they crossed the empty North Pacific, avoiding shipping lanes entirely. In Hawaii, Admiral Husband Kimmel and General Walter Short had been warned war was possible, but not where, and not when. Radar was new, sabotage was feared more than an air raid, and no one imagined the fleet was already the target. If this is the first time you're hearing this story, subscribe now. New chapters of history drop every week. At 6 a.m., 220 miles north of Oahu, the first wave launches. 183 aircraft rising off 6 pitching carrier decks in the pre-dawn dark. At 7:02, a radar station at Opana Point picks up a massive blip on screen. The young operators report it. A duty officer, expecting a flight of American B-17s from the mainland, waves it off. The warning dies there. At 7:48 a.m., Commander Mitsuo Fukuda, leading the strike from above, radios 4 words back to the fleet: Tora, Tora, Tora. Confirmation that complete surprise has been achieved. Torpedo bombers drop low over the harbor and release into Battleship Row. The USS Oklahoma takes multiple hits and begins to roll, capsizing within minutes, trapping men below deck. The USS West Virginia settles, burning, into the mud. At 8:06, a modified armor-piercing shell plunges through the Arizona's deck into her forward ammunition magazine. The explosion that follows is seen for miles, tearing the ship apart in seconds. Simultaneously, dive bombers hit Wheeler and Hickam airfields, catching American aircraft parked wingtip to wingtip and destroying them before a single fighter can take off. By 8:54, a second wave of 170 aircraft arrives, targeting the ships and infrastructure the first wave left standing, as thick black smoke rolls across the harbor and climbs into the morning sky. By mid-morning, the harbor is a graveyard of steel and fire. And yet the true turning point of the day is not what burns, it's what doesn't. The Pacific Fleet's 3 aircraft carriers, Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, are not at Pearl Harbor at all. Out on training and transport missions, they escape untouched, and within a year carriers, not battleships, will decide the war in the Pacific. Aboard the Akagi, Vice Admiral Nagumo faces a decision. His pilots urge a third wave to strike the harbor's fuel tanks and repair yards, the infrastructure that would let America rebuild. Nagumo, wary of American carriers he cannot locate and unwilling to risk his own ships so far from home, orders the fleet to withdraw. The tanks holding 5 million barrels of fuel stand untouched. The dry docks and machine shops stand untouched. Japan has won a devastating tactical victory, and left standing, by hesitation alone, everything the United States needs to recover. Quick pause. If this story has your attention, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming. Behind every statistic that morning is a human being. Aboard the USS West Virginia, a mess attendant named Doris Miller has no combat training. Black sailors of his era were barred from gunnery duty. When his captain falls wounded, Miller carries him to safety, then mans an unattended anti-aircraft gun he was never taught to fire, and keeps shooting at Japanese planes until he runs out of ammunition. He will become the first black American awarded the Navy Cross. Below the decks of the capsized Oklahoma, sailors are trapped in air pockets in total darkness, tapping on the hull for rescuers who work for days to cut them free. 32 men are saved this way. On the Arizona, most below decks have no chance at all. Hundreds remain entombed in the wreck to this day. Men leap from burning ships into water sheathed in flaming oil, swimming through smoke toward Ford Island. Nurses at the hospital, expecting a quiet Sunday, treat burns and shrapnel wounds for 18 straight hours. Amid the chaos, ordinary sailors, cooks, and mechanics become the true first responders of a war that has just begun without anyone declaring it. By 9:45 a.m., less than 2 hours after it began, the attack is over. The Japanese strike force turns for home, its mission accomplished. Behind it, 2,403 Americans dead, 1,178 wounded, 8 battleships damaged or sunk, 188 aircraft destroyed on the ground. The next day, December 8, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addresses a joint session of Congress, calling it a date that will live in infamy. Within an hour, Congress declares war on Japan with a single dissenting vote. 3 days later, on December 11, Adolf Hitler's Germany and Mussolini's Italy declare war on the United States in support of their Japanese ally, a decision that pulls America fully into a two-ocean war it had spent 2 years trying to avoid. Pearl Harbor did not just start a war, it transformed a nation. Overnight, American industries shifted to total war footing, eventually outproducing every enemy combined. Battleships, once the measure of naval power, gave way to the aircraft carrier as the weapon that would win the Pacific. Within 4 years, the war that began that Sunday morning would end with atomic fire over Japan itself. The attack also cast a darker shadow, becoming the pretext for the forced internment of over 120,000 Japanese Americans, a wound in American history still reckoned with today. 85 years later, the sunken hull of the Arizona still bleeds oil into the harbor. Pearl Harbor remains the moment America stopped watching the world's wars from a distance. This was the morning that pulled a nation into the deadliest war in human history. If this story moved you, subscribe to Written in Blood, where history bleeds through the pages. More turning points are coming.